Welcome to the Microschools Show, your window on the global microschools movement. Whether you're a teacher with a dream to build a school of your own or a parent looking for a school that will suit your amazing kid, you're sure to be inspired by the creativity and innovation of our guests. I'm your host, Dr. Mara Leineberger. The Microschools Show was launched to feature guests from all over the globe who have championed personalized learning for students by building a microschool of their own, as well as spotlighting some of the key players in the movement. Today, I'm speaking with Cheryl Ososky of Discovery Microschools in Aledo, Texas. Discovery Microschool is supportive of each learner's uniqueness and ability to contribute to the world around them. Discovery values learning as a lifelong process while encouraging individuality, where the contributions of each student, teacher, and parent are respected. Discovery Microschool believes in personalized, self-directed education. Under the guidance of strong leaders, students are inspired to discover their own gifts and the dedication that it takes to develop real talent. Welcome to the show, Cheryl.
Thank you. Thank you.
So nice to have you here. And I know we're just going to give people a heads up. You got kids today. So we're going to do the best that we can to get an interview in without interruption. But if Cheryl has to jump off, it'll be a shorter interview. And that's kind of how that goes. So Cheryl, tell our listeners a little bit about Discovery. Tell us about yourself and what inspired you to create Discovery.
Well, I've been a homeschooler for 15 years. I have 5 children. I run a pretty large homeschool group in Fort Worth. So my school, though, is not in Fort Worth. My school is in Aledo, which is a pretty small town outside of DFW. So I was asked to come and start a school here within a preschool business. They gave me my own section of the preschool to start a micro school here. And basically, my school, we offer a place for children that maybe don't quite fit in public school. I joke and I say the square pegs and round holes. We are a school for the kids who aren't happy at school. They don't want to go to school. They don't feel like they have friends at school. Maybe they don't fit in school. That's who we are.
Yeah, that's such a typical thing I hear. I've heard a lot of people talk about it in different ways. Some people will say these kids are neuroatypical.
Yep.
We've got highly sensitive kids. Sometimes it's kids that are on the spectrum at a really high level. Sometimes it's kids who have diagnoses of ADHD or ADD. But regardless, these are just kids who want something different and don't fit in at school. And this is awesome. So it sounds to me like you built yourself a reputation in the homeschooling community, and this childcare center found out. And really good childcare centers, parents will typically say, man, I wish I could keep my child here versus bringing them into the school. So they just got really smart and sought you out and said, this is going to be so much easier because she's already doing it. We'll just give her some space to do it. That's pretty much what happened?
That's what happened. That's where we got our first handful of kids. They went straight from this is a really highly respected preschool. And so the parents went from this preschool. We have a group of them that came directly to our school for kindergarten.
When you think about our preschools, not all of them, but so many of them are really personalized. They're small. They're very intimate. You know, like everybody knows everybody, and the kids are just supported however they present themselves. And then we send them off to school.
Yes.
And we put them into much larger groups where they're asked to conform to certain kinds of behaviors and norms. So it's no wonder that people want something like preschool, but that carries out through the different grade levels. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how many students you have, and do you have staff? How many people do you employ?
Well, we started off with 8 students and we kind of capped it off there. We're just now opening enrollment back up because I needed to make sure that my idea of how to homeschool other people's children in a full-time environment was going to even work. It wasn't something I knew even existed before I kind of researched, and that's how I found you guys. So Our day actually starts with breakfast. We have family style eating. We all eat breakfast together around 8:30 in the morning. 9 o'clock in the morning is morning meeting. We discuss events of the day, on this day in history. Today is National Homemade Bread Day. So we're going to be making bread today. And then the kids kind of break off. I do have 2 employees. I have one that's dedicated just for kindergarten and one that's dedicated for the older kids. And then there's me. I kind of float. I set the curriculum for what each child does, and it's based on the goals that that parent and that child had together before they even came to school. We sit down and discuss what are your goals for the year for your child. A lot of them, the goals are not academic. The goals are happy, whole, joyful children that love coming to school. Some of them are academic. We do have a child that's gifted, and she doesn't want her held back by school. So they do math and language arts work before lunch. At lunch, everybody gets together. We all hang out. We do have the luxury of having this preschool next door that does have a full indoor-outdoor gym. So we do have a full gym. We have playgrounds. We have buses. We have all the things that the preschool has are all available to us. So we can hop on a bus and go wherever we want to go in the middle of the day, or we can go play in the gym. The second half of our day is all history, science, lots of art projects, and lots of cooking. Because we do have a kitchen. We have a kitchen in our building, in our room, actually. So we do a lot of cooking. And a lot of everything is family style. We have a giant living room. We work together. We play together.
It sounds fantastic. It reminds me so much of things I've heard from some of our other guests. This personalized learning plan for each child, this creating a real sense of belonging, creating this ability to feel like you're part of a community. And I love the fact, Cheryl, that it's your version of it. So you're not using someone else's form. You started with this idea you had, and you said, you've homeschooled your own children, so you're trying some of the things you did with them, but you're adjusting as you go along, correct?
We've made some adjustments. It's from the first week to this week, it's a little bit different. It just doesn't run exactly the same. In my world, there are no rules, and everybody can just be comfortable. But the more kids you have, the more rules. I don't like that, but it is what it is. We will probably at this school max out at 20 kids, though. At this facility, we'll max out at 20.
Just because of the physical space, correct?
Because of the physical space, and I think you lose the family dynamic. Yeah. We have a family dynamic. So unless we have another space with another group of children, I don't want to go outside of a family dynamic number. I feel like 20 is where we max out, and we have another set of teachers with that. 20, I just can't do more than 20 in one sitting.
I think, this is such a new thing. It's new and it's old, right? I mean, it is really, we're reinventing the one-room schoolhouse, but our first guest, Amy, who's in Minnesota, she's got a similar number and a similar, like set point. Like hers is partly space related, but it's very similar to what you're talking about, that beyond 20 kids, you aren't going to know them all really well. And it's going to be harder for those families to all be deeply connected to one another. And I think that what I'm hearing from you and what I know from Amy and others is that if there's this desire and this need for, more kids to attend, then you just create another schoolhouse. You create another space.
Exactly it. Yes.
And maybe it becomes
another teacher and another family group per se. Yeah.
Well, and what's nice is then those groupings can be connected together and can gather and get together, just like your homeschool co-ops create events where families come together. Microschools can do the same thing. In fact, we've, with the folks who are working with us, we've played with that this year. We have our kids getting together once a week virtually to do activities together. So it's totally possible to have this physical, place-based small school and at the same time to connect with others in a broader sense too. So you talked a little bit about a typical day for learners at Discovery. Was there anything else you want to talk about? I mean, how are you addressing some of the parents I know when they shift from traditional school, and you talked a little bit about the fact that you have a really good public school system where you are, that people move to your community for that school. How do you tackle the parent who's like, well, I can already get everything I need at the Dallas-Fort Worth in that public school system? How do you?
Okay, two things. I have to go back to our regular day. We do school Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Because I do have a homeschool group every Wednesday. We join our homeschool group and we're out. So we are out every Wednesday. We do parks, we do zoos, everything every Wednesday. Friday is only a half day, and we spend Friday, we call it life skills. So that's all day we plan for cooking, making things, helping to serve our community in some way. But we don't do math and language arts on Wednesdays and Fridays.
So how about a parent that would say, you know, but my traditional public school has reading every day, has math every day, has science. Well, maybe not every day, but you know, your core academics. How do you explain the difference in the fact that you are able to achieve, I'm guessing, a similar outcome in fewer days? How does that happen? And what's the difference between my public school and what you're doing at Discovery?
I would say that our kids are actually doing really well. They're all thriving, even though they were all, not all of them, most of them were not doing well in public school. And I say the difference is you're sitting at a table with maybe one adult and 3 to 4 children. They don't have to wait when they don't understand something. Not only is our teacher going to help, but the older kids are going to help too. We don't have grades, so we don't, pass you with a C. Once we get it, we move on. But one-on-one education, I think it surpasses 1 on 20 any day, even for a struggling student.
Yeah, and you're going to the heart of the matter that you don't have a set curriculum. You're not going to take this big standardized test that you have to prepare for. So you have the luxury of time, and you have the small number of kids, which allows you to really make sure that each kid has mastered whatever it is they're working on, understands, and then you've got all of these support mechanisms in place with much more one-on-one time. I mean, I do think so much of what kids don't like about school is the fact that they're either they're doing something that's too hard or something that's too easy, so they're not being challenged properly. There's no opportunity for what they're interested to come into play. They can't get the attention of the teacher in a positive, proper way that they desire. I mean, I think all kids want to, connect to the adult that's in charge. But when you've got 20 kids, 30 kids, some classrooms have 30 kids. A teacher can't give all of that attention to them. And so what we see is so many kids will actually have inappropriate behaviors. They'll do whatever it takes to get the adult's attention. And we really can't, I don't know, we get so bent out of shape about that stuff, but I think we should start looking at it in a different way, like you've talked about. It's just showing us that what we're doing isn't working, so try something different.
We had some kids that came and they had some behavioral issues. In our dynamic, we find what you're good at, what your strengths are, and we really emphasize them. So each of our kids has something that they're really great at, and when you give a child that has no self-confidence something to feel really great about, at the end of the day, those behaviors kind of go away. They see themselves as maybe something really great, something really smart. All of our kids, if anybody walks into the room and says, "Who are we?" all of my kids yell, "The smart kids." It's really cute. So we have our own chant before we ever get off the bus or before we go anywhere, before we do anything. So they know that they're the smart kids. They know that when we go places and we have our shirts on, that people are looking at them and they're looking at the smart kids. And, they want to be seen as the smart kids, or maybe they haven't been seen like that up to this point.
How do you figure out what the kids' strengths are. Do you have any formal ways that you do that, or are the kids telling you the things that they're good at, or are their friends recognizing things that they notice in them?
Um, Generally, one, before anybody enrolls, we have a long conversation with their parents about their goals and their strengths and their weaknesses. Maybe one of their weaknesses is not something the parent is concerned about. Um, but maybe your strength is science. And you really like science. So we're going to put a lot of science in your curriculum, put a lot of science in your day, and we're going to make sure that everybody knows that you're the scientist. So each of our kids actually, some of them we knew their strengths like that, and some of them we just found out during school. We have one child who we do story of the world for history so that we can all sit there together on the couches and read the story and work on a project together. We have one child that can almost recite it back to you. And he'll remember every history story. And so he's our historian. So anytime we refer to something and we need to remember, we go and ask him. It's very important to him that he's our historian. We have one kid that's always done with math first. He's our mathematician. So if anybody needs help, you go to him. He's the mathematician. That's what he's good at. And then that's his role. It's important to him to be seen that way.
You know, Cheryl, it sounds to me so much what it's like to work in an office setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
When as adults, when we go to work, we know who are our go-to people. You know, I know who I can contact when I have questions about business and finance in my life, in my world. I know who to contact when I have questions about marketing. I don't have to know everything. I have to be aware of everything, so I know how all of the pieces fit together, and I can try everything, but I don't have to do everything all by myself. And it's, as an adult, it's really liberating to know there are people I can lean on. So I think you're just creating something that's much more like what real life is like in your classroom.
We try to make a family style environment. Everything we do, we try to make it a family style environment. And we also stress that you never ever have to wait for somebody to teach you how to do something. The whole world is out there for free to teach you how to do something. So we want you to be independent learners and give you every tool possible so that you can feel confident teaching yourself as you get older and become more independent. Like my high schoolers, I'm not sitting with them doing school. They're doing their own school with their own standards for themselves and their own timelines. And that's my goal for a lot of these children, is that by the time they're out, I only go through 6th grade right now. By the time they're out, they'll have the confidence that they can teach themselves what they need to know and know who to ask and feel confident asking, and just be happy people.
Awesome. So is there anything else that you want our listeners to know about Discovery that you haven't told us yet?
I have no idea. Don't think so.
No, I think that's great. So one of the questions I like to ask people is if they've seen any other great small schools in their area, because part of what we're trying to do with this series is to help families, educators, concerned citizens to be aware of the fact that microschools are this growing thing. So, it's not just microschools. You and I, before we started, you mentioned that there are some other options in that Dallas-Fort Worth area that parents might want to know about. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
I've never participated. I'm not, so I just know that they're there, but there is the Sudbury School in Fort Worth. I have heard a lot of good things about. I've met a couple of people that have gone there and they really like. I've never met anybody that didn't like it.
Yeah. Sudbury Model is, for people who are watching and that don't know about it, you can certainly do research, but it's definitely a learner-centered approach. And it has more of a democratic feel to it. So it's less compulsory, more child-centered, more students coming to content when they want to, when they're ready to, and only the things that they're interested in. So it sounds like your school's a little bit of a hybrid between that and what you do in the public school, where there's very specific content that we all have to learn at the same time and be measured on. before we can move on to something else, you're touching on all of the big content areas, but making
We
it
are
clear.
definitely somewhere in between because we are a full-time school.
Yeah.
We are Monday through Friday.
Well, and what's awesome about that is, I feel like that we're in a time where we need all kinds of options for all kinds of learners. The Sudbury schools, the Democratic schools are fantastic at what they do. And there are a lot of parents who cannot wrap their head around letting children be independent learning all day long, which is what a lot of those schools do. And there are a lot of kids who actually don't really are not lit up by that being completely self-directed. So having some structure in between, I think, is great. So, I know, and I loved the fact that you said that the public schools in your area are doing a really good job as well. It's not that way everywhere. And even if the public schools are doing a great job, you've got students who didn't fit in there, right?
I do. We live in an area that, well, I work here. I don't live here, but Aledo is known for its schools. It has great schools. People move here to be a part of the school system here. And still there's always going to be children that feel like, or parents that maybe feel like their children are going to be left behind. And it's not anything against the Aledo School District. It's just not everybody fits in a 1-to-20 ratio. No matter how good of a teacher you are, and no matter how good your standards are, it just doesn't fit every child. So even though our school district is great, we have people that came to our school even though they moved here for the school district. And they were hoping, because they had maybe a child with slightly different needs, that the school district would be great at accommodating, but maybe our school district is great even if it's not great at accommodating.
Yeah, I was talking with a special educator this past weekend, and we were having a conversation about special education. It's absolutely is designed to meet the needs of learners who have special gifts, talents, or deficits. But I think so often now what's happening is that process is so bound up in legalities and formalities of mapping out a child's diagnosis and then creating a plan, that so much of the time gets lost. Whereas like in your micro school, you can really approach every child as having special needs. And because you have a nice small group of kids, you can just plan and you can adjust. Your families have, by saying, I'm going to pay tuition to come to this micro school, and I raise my hand for this model, I'm agreeing to the way that you work with my child. So there's like less paperwork, less formality. And in that time that you've gotten back, it's time you can just serve the kid, right?
Yes. And a lot of the kids that I have are somewhere in between. They wouldn't have been full-time in a special ed classroom, but they can't really be full-time in a regular classroom. So they're kind of in that limbo area of being allowed to be in a regular classroom, but still needing considerable help. So it's just kind of a weird limbo inclusion, and I understand inclusion and why they do it, but that's where a lot of our kids come are from that inclusion program.
Yeah, I mean, your kid who would be getting maybe C's in the regular classroom just may need more time, or may need a different approach, or may need to be doing, being up out of their seat. I'm guessing, with 8 or 10 kids in your classroom, it's okay if a kid gets up and walks around while they're working on it.
Shoes are optional. I don't really care where you sit, as long as you're comfortable. Just be comfortable and be happy. We do a lot of projects, a lot of hands-on things, and it's as long as the kids go home at the end of the day and feel like they're incredibly smart, because we celebrate every accomplishment, no matter how big or small. Every accomplishment is celebrated. We'll text our parents in class with pictures. I talk to each parent almost every single day. with pictures or little notes about what they did. And they know they're being celebrated. So we have a lot of kids that came with zero self-confidence that now are maybe a little too self-confident in their.
Do you really think that's a problem, Cheryl? Really?
No, I don't. I think it's amazing. They think they're so smart and they're, the future scientists and geniuses of the world. And they very well can be. They just need somebody to champion them.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to know about Discovery, and I bet that there's going to be people who want to know more about Discovery. If you would like to get in touch with Cheryl, please visit her website, which is www.discoverymicroschools.com. Thanks for listening to today's show. If you'd like to be a guest on the show to talk about your microschool or to share your work in the microschools movement, please reach out to me at mara@microschoolbuilders.com to set up your interview. And until next time, be well.